Julia, welcome to the podcast. You are the career coach, the strategist, you are even the LinkedIn top voice. So I'm really excited to welcome you on the show and learn more from your experience working with people who are changing their careers. Welcome on the show.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. So, Julia, before we kind of dive deeper, there are different strategies that people may want to explore regarding the hidden job market. This is something that a lot of people are kind of curious about, and you've been doing this career coaching for a long time, right? So, probably you can
Mhm.
also compare kind of before and after. So let's say 10 years ago and today. What does it look like? How has the hidden job market evolved?
Yeah, so this is such a hot topic right now because there are a lot of people who are sharing about the hidden job market and what you need to do. And there are a lot of people trying to debunk it. And so I'm watching this happen in real time as a career coach, with everybody that I follow. And it's really interesting to see. And I do want to share some of the history because this is where the hidden job market came from. So I want you to think about 10 plus years ago, we did not post every position online the way that we do now. So ATS was just starting to become a thing, and more widespread around that time. And since then, we've had a lot more companies pop up that are providing more affordable ATS for smaller companies and all of that. So back then, when I started career coaching, the hidden job market was very real because you really had to know somebody or you had to be connected or go to some kind of event to find a lot of positions because they were not always posted online. They didn't have the systems. Some of the larger companies did, and they had job boards on their websites and all of that. But a lot of your small and medium sized companies, they didn't have the money to put into that. And so you either had to follow them on social media, which a lot of them weren't even posting back then for all that type of stuff, or you had to know somebody that was in the organization, or you had to attend an event. That was very common to go to some type of job fair to find a position. And so back then, when we talked about the hidden job market, it was, hey, you need to use people within your network, let them know what you want, and see if they know somebody that has an opening, because a lot of times there were openings but they were never posted anywhere. And you emailed your resume to somebody and you got an interview and you got hired, and there wasn't all the different steps and things that we go through today. So that was really what the hidden job market was back then because we didn't have the online systems. Now, more companies than ever are utilizing online systems. A lot of them have also put in different policies in place to make sure that the hiring process is more fair. So, at a lot of companies, you will see them have a policy that they need to post a position for at least 3 days, right? And so that's becoming a lot more common. And most companies do have some kind of system that manages applications, that has, a list of all their openings and all that. Even smaller companies now have those resources available to them. So when you hear a recruiter say, hey, you have to apply online before I can talk to you, that's very real. So it makes it seem like the hidden job market doesn't exist anymore.
Hmm.
What I think it is now is you having a network of people you're connected to that know when something's about to get posted. So it doesn't mean the position isn't going to be posted. It absolutely will, but you know the hiring manager, and the hiring manager knows that they're going to be hiring for X position, and they're already putting feelers out to their people to say, hey, I know this is coming out. Do you have anybody in mind? That's what the hidden job market is now. And
Hmm.
so that position is still going to post. You likely still will have competition, but you're probably more guaranteed an interview because you're connected to somebody that could refer you into it early and get your resume pulled from the system.
And this is very interesting to hear, and maybe we can even dive a bit deeper and segment some of these roles to, let's say, at least three categories. Like one would be those jobs that are kind of low skilled,
Mhm.
and probably companies don't even close those jobs because they need a lot of, I don't know, clerks, for example, right? Like they are onboarding one clerk after another because they know that after 6 months, the old clerk is gone. So they don't even
Mhm.
close those jobs. Then maybe there are some other jobs that come and go. For example, we work often with software developers. So those jobs may open and close. And then there could be a third group, which is especially interesting to our audience of the IT executives, VP of engineering, CTOs. So is this third group also kind of on the hidden job market, or would you say like these jobs are also posted somewhere?
So I would say that that third group, the executives, are probably where the hidden job market is most prominent because CEOs, high level, they know that a position is going to become available. Because when you're at that level, a lot of times when people decide to leave, they give usually a pretty lengthy time in between because they know that they need to hire somebody or maybe they need to be part of that, onboarding transition process and all of that. So a lot of times that person will start looking in their own network to refer
Hmm.
people, "Hey, I'm gonna be leaving. You would be a good person. I wanna refer you for my position." That happens so much. So at the executive level, I think the most important thing you have is your network because that's where you're gonna get those personal referrals back and forth because that level is so important and there's such a high trust factor that the team ideally would want somebody to get referred in where they
Hmm.
already have a connection somewhere so that it's a little bit more of a seamless transition. Now, that doesn't always happen. It depends on the company, the industry, what's available and all of that. But I would say more often than not, the clients that I've worked with at that level, they knew somebody and somebody referred them into that position, got them connected. They will post those positions online, but to me, that's a formality. You're not necessarily gonna see executives applying directly onto the website. They're connected already, and then doing that application process is a formality for them.
And it's very interesting that you say this because some of the executives we've been working with, they kind of wonder who to connect with. Should they start proactively reaching out to head of HR or chief HR officer or CEO or a founder, co-founder? But kind of based on what you just mentioned, the best person to connect with is the person who you would like to replace, right? Like the
Yes.
CTO, for example, for another CTOs.
Yes, and honestly, that's the easiest network to build because you already have something in common. You probably already have connections in common or different professional associations, a variety of things. And so, really connecting with your peers and then people who are in those aspiring positions, it's not going to look out of place for you to connect with them or contact them at all.
Well, this is great insight, really, that probably people haven't really realized before they heard you say this. Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. So what is the kind of easiest way to build this network? Because some people in IT, and probably most of them actually are introverted, and the last thing they enjoy is to go to some networking event and start reaching out and shaking hands, like, "Hey, I'm Michael. What's your name?" Like that's super awkward in our community. So what are some other ways to build this network?
Yeah, okay, so I have to also speak from my experience because I'm also an introvert, And a lot of the clients I work with are introverted as well. And so this is something that I've spent a lot of time with because I think our personality types do have the hardest time with the concept of networking because what it typically is go to an event and just talk to people, which as you said for introverts that's not a good that's not a good thing for us. Very uncomfortable, we don't like it. So, one thing that I would encourage people to do is find connectors in the network you already have. So, these are people who are connected to a lot of people. I myself have a couple of different connectors in my network, and these are the people that you go to them and they know everybody. They know somebody who knows somebody. Like, they are just so well connected within the world of work, within life. Like they're just that type of person. As an introvert, you have to have those people because they will recognize that you're not necessarily going to put yourself forward, but they will help pull you up. They'll pull you along, right? They're also a good buddy in those in-person networking events if you can get them there. So that's one thing I would do is find those people that you already have that can be a connector for you and meet with them regularly. So I would say at least 2 to 3 times a year, take them to coffee, take them to lunch, do a phone call just to stay abreast of what everybody's doing, what they're doing, what you're doing, just so that you're top of mind for them. The other thing that I would consider, especially as an introvert, but this is for everyone, is using LinkedIn. And I know, it's like, oh, yeah, okay, everybody says use LinkedIn. Honestly, especially if you're at the executive level, you are a thought leader. If you're at that level already, you have opinions, you have thoughts, you've been in the industry for a long time. You want to start using that voice because the more that you use that voice, the more exposure you will get. And that's when you start getting not only an inbound network, so people connecting with you, but you get those inbound opportunities. So you're not having to go out and search for them. People are coming to you because they're seeing what you're posting. They're seeing, what you're putting out there, your opinions, your thoughts, and that's what they're looking for their next position.
So should they then reach out to people outside of their network, let's say second connections or third connections, people who are in different cities, countries even, because these days in IT they work remotely anyway in most cases, or should
Yeah.
they focus on events that are happening in the city where they live? What strategy would you recommend?
So I think at this point, connecting with people who are in your field, regardless of location, is a win. And to your point, our world is so much smaller now because of things like LinkedIn, because of social media, that you have no idea. You could connect with somebody halfway across the world and they know somebody that you know, or maybe they went to school with somebody, or you just never know what that connection is going to be. So while some people are very protective of their network on LinkedIn, and that's absolutely fine, you also want to consider how expanding that network is going to help you expand in terms of opportunities.
Mhm.
I will say for in person, so if you are somebody that wants to stay in your area, then absolutely target, you know, different people and organizations within your area if you want to, work in person and all of that. LinkedIn is still a good place to do that because you can target by location. So,
Mhm. And what would you suggest to people who know this is important? They say, oh, wow, this is such a great advice. I should start doing it. I probably heard about this already 5 times in the last 2 years, but I still haven't done it. Like, how do they go from like the knowledge to action?
I think sometimes they have to see the return on investment for the time. And I will be completely honest, that looks different for everyone. Because if you're on LinkedIn and you have 100 followers, your network really isn't that broad yet. So it's going to take you some time to build that up. But once you get to a certain point, you will start to see those opportunities come to you. I can tell you, so I've lived on LinkedIn as a professional, so somebody who was working for another company, and I've lived on it as a business owner. In both scenarios, when I was posting regularly, my profile was up to date and I was active, commenting and all of that. I was getting opportunities. I was getting opportunities for things that didn't even consider, but they saw something in me.
Mm,
As a business owner, most of my opportunities that have come to me in the last handful of years has been because I'm active on LinkedIn and I'm using my voice and I have a distinct voice. And so I think, especially at that executive level, you have a voice, you have an opinion. And when you put that out there, people will gravitate to it, but it takes time and it does take consistency. So you might not see it right away, but I guarantee long term, you will see that impact.
This is very interesting that you say this. We were discussing a similar topic with one of my friends who also is posting a lot, but she's not getting those business opportunities just yet. And we were
Mhm.
kind of just wondering, and we didn't come to any conclusion. Like, why is that? There are some professionals, for example, in the IT space, for example, consultants who have very clear kind of connection between what they post about, let's say, the latest technology and them being consultants. So they get job
Mhm.
opportunities to do consulting in IT. But this friend of mine, the business owner who posts about um, sometimes kind of random posts, sometimes about woman empowerment, etc. Like she doesn't get the opportunities despite she has lots of engagement. So how to handle this kind of discrepancy between on one hand being very straightforward, hey, this is what I do, reach out to me if you need my services, and then
Mhm.
in the business world, it's probably sometimes harder to comprehend.
Yeah, so I'll be honest, that's a loaded question. We could probably spend a whole 'nother session on, but I will say, this is based on my experience, is those opportunities have come within the network that I've built. So if you're not getting the response, then that tells me that the network that you have built probably isn't the audience that you're trying to sell to. So for example, when I was working, my connections were predominantly higher education because that's where I came from. I worked in career development for many years in higher education. So that's what my network looked like. It took me, honestly, probably a year or so, maybe a little bit longer, to shift my audience and my connections to be my ideal clients and who I wanted to be connected to. So I still have the higher ed connections because that's still part of my past and my background. But now I'm connected to a ridiculous amount of recruiters. I'm connected to a lot of hiring managers. I'm connected to a lot of HR people because I learn from them, right? And that's who I want to be connected to as a career coach. But I also get a lot of job seekers that follow me and people who are my ideal clients because they see the type of content that I'm posting. So that is a shift that likely needs to happen. And so when we're talking about engagement, we have to think about posting things on LinkedIn that maybe don't always make us comfortable because it's a little bit outside of our zone of what we want to do, but it gets the engagement and it gets the inbound connections.
Mm.
So, one post that I do now a couple times a year is I highlight recruiters in my network. And a lot of times it's people I know personally or have spoken to, and I watch their content. So they're very active on LinkedIn. And those posts get me a ridiculous amount of inbound connections of people that I want to be connected to. And
Mhm.
so that is what has worked for me. And so that's what I would encourage people to do. If you're trying to find a certain type of audience, you have to figure out the post that's going to engage them and get them to get connected with you because they see you as a person of value.
Mhm. Well, that's so true. We may have 100 likes under a post that is trending, 10,000 impressions, but no business out of it, or a very well targeted audience, as you suggest, of the ideal customer who will be selling some purchasing some services from us. Very interesting. Yeah, like we need to think strategically.
Mhm.
Um, so it comes down to also posting frequently. So to the, let's say, CTO or VP of engineering, would you suggest they post in certain schedule, or have you seen with your clients like posting ad hoc? Is that's easier? Maybe that brings the same results or similar results. Like, would you suggest any particular schedule?
So honestly, LinkedIn is the wild, wild west to me in terms of posting. I think you can post at any day, at any time, and it's either going to get the engagement or not. I know because I've been posting so much and I've posted for so long and like different times a day and all of that. I know which days will usually do better and about what times will do better for my posts based on my audience. And so the more that you post, the more that you'll see that cadence. Like for me, Mondays are terrible. I
Mm.
never post on Mondays. And I think that's because my audience is at work and they're in it, you know. But when we get to like Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, everybody's a little more, oh, let's jump on LinkedIn for a little bit, before we start our day. And so that has worked well for me, but it might look different. I have friends who post in the evenings and on the weekends, and that's when they get their most engagement just because of how their network is built up. So that's really a trial and error based on your following.
Well, it just reminds me one post, beautiful post that I crafted. I spent 2 hours on it, and like zero engagement. 200
I have been there.
nothing.
And that's the worst. I think that's when social media becomes very frustrating, when you have something good to say and it's a good post and it absolutely flops. And then you have to sit there and go, okay, was it the day? Was it the timing? Was it the topic? Is there something else going on? I think this is also good, especially for the CTOs and all of that. If there is something happening in your industry, so there's some kind of breaking news or something going on, and you're not responding to it, that's an absolute missed opportunity.
Mm.
So that's when you have to vary your content between planned and intentional content and responding to what is happening in the moment so that you are relevant and it doesn't seem like you're ignoring what's happening in the world.
It's very cool that you mentioned this because there are sometimes these videos, I mean posts with videos that are very cool. Sometimes they mention new technology or a self-driving car or whatever, and often I'm kind of wondering where are these videos coming from, because it's some influencer posting them, but
Mhm.
there is no way they would go out there to record the video, so they must download it somewhere or purchase it somewhere? Like, is there any database, or how do they get it?
Oh, I mean, there are so many places that you can get content like that. I know I use Canva if I'm looking for I call it B-roll video. So something that's specific to what I'm talking about. Um, Canva has that option, but there are so many places that you can,
Mm,
purchase photos, purchase video. You can also repost. So if you do see somebody that has a video and you want to respond to that in a post, you can repost what they already have. So you
mm.
don't have to recreate anything.
Yeah, awesome. Well, it's kind of strange that we are talking about posting on LinkedIn in the context of career development, but it actually requires the person to become a thought leader in order to get
Mhm.
those really good job opportunities. So that's a nice bridge to what we were kind of discussing at the beginning. And what are some other tips that you would recommend to people who would like to get more and better opportunities, especially in the IT space? Some of the VP of engineering or CTOs, they may be planning to change their jobs in 6 months or 12 months, and they are busy at work. So
Mhm.
too much time, but at the same time, they see that they would like to get some better opportunities in a year.
Yeah. So one thing I would not overlook are things like conferences and events connected to professional associations within your industry or within your function. I think these are opportunities that are really targeted. You're going to be in the room with people who are like you, who are in a similar space as you, and you just never know what conversation is going to lead to, right? I think when we get in a space with people who are like minded, it's so much more comfortable for us. Even as an introvert, I love going to conferences because I know who's going to be there. And so, one of my strategies as an introvert is a lot of times you will see a list of either the speakers or the attendees, and I will go through that list and I will look for people that I want to intentionally connect with, or maybe I've seen an opening at their company or something like that. And I will connect with them in advance of the conference and say, hey, we're going to the same conference. I'd love to meet up. Or are you going to this session? Something like that. For an introvert, having that intentional connection is so much easier because those conferences, they always have the mixers, they always have, those networking times. And that's fine if you have your extroverted connector friend with, with you. But if you don't, then do that pre-planning and be intentional about who's going to be there. But even if you don't have time to do that, you're still with like-minded people. So the conversation is still going to come more easily than it would if you were in maybe a general networking event in your town or something like that.
And what would you recommend to someone who would like to go for such an event or a conference? They do the research, then it's the big day when they are supposed to walk through the doors. They enter the room and then they sit somewhere and then they sit in the role for the whole day, and then they are afraid to just stand up and shake hands with other fellow CTOs. Like, how to overcome this fear of networking?
Oh my gosh. I think some of that is so much of our internal work, right? Like that's us recognizing what is the actual barrier to what is happening. I know for me, it was fear of rejection. I didn't want somebody to, just ignore me if I tried to talk to them. But I find that especially when you're in a session, there's content and information coming at you at the same time as everybody else. So now you have a baseline of something that you can talk about that doesn't make the conversation awkward. So even if I sit, because I don't really like to sit right next to somebody, somebody who's right in my vicinity or something like that. If we have a break or right at the end and maybe they're by themselves, I might say something like, hey, what did you think about that? That was really interesting. I think that's such an easy way to have low stakes in a conversation because there's already so much in common happening around us, right? And actually, you made me think of something else with conferences. And I actually did this early in my career because I liked going to conferences, but I didn't like the networking part of it. And one of the things that I did was I started presenting at conferences. And so if that's something that you enjoy or you have topics or things that you want to talk about and share for conferences, I highly recommend doing that because you will get so many inbound connections. People will come up to you after the conference, they will connect with you after like it's the easiest way to network without having to put yourself out there because they've already heard you speak, they already know who you are, and it just takes away a lot of that nervousness that you might have.
That's a great advice. Start presenting. That also helps to build the credibility and the thought leadership. Awesome, awesome. And now with the recent advancements of AI, generative AI, and now ChatGPT released this version 4.0, or that's the one that you can speak to, and then it responds back. So, like, do you see people interacting more with each other? Like, would you say that people will still go to meet other people on a conference? And will they push themselves out of the comfort zone? Or would you say like these introverts will become even more introverted and they will start using the artificial intelligence to connect with each other?
I personally, I don't think we're quite there yet where it's gonna take over. I mean, I see it. I see it happening. I see where it's going, but I think there are so many of us that are still wanting, even though we are more introverted, we still want that connection with people. And I don't see the AI changing that yet. But I don't know. I think it's so interesting to see how it is going to change the world of work and things like networking and conferences and all of that when there's so much of this technology. But I will say, I feel like, and I mean, all the CTOs listening to this might disagree with me, but I feel like we're still in the very early stages of this, where even though like I see a lot of it and I know a lot of it because I'm a career coach and I need to stay abreast of technologies, the people that I'm in life with like have no idea and they do not care about AI. So that tells me that those of us that need to know about it and who are in it, we know about it and we're seeing it unfold very quickly,
Mhm.
but the people that it's not touching, it is not touching. Like they are so disconnected from that. And so that tells me that I think it's still going to be some time before society really accepts what AI means and looks like across the board.
Yeah, yeah, that actually reminds me that ChatGPT has already been released 1.5 years ago, and
Yes.
still a lot of people don't use it. And I'm
Mm-mm.
always just blown away, like, how come you are still not using it after 1.5 years? So it will probably take another 2, 3 years to adopt.
I think so. I think people are always hesitant with technology they don't know and they don't understand. So I think it will be probably still another couple of years before the general public starts to really embrace it and see how they can use it.
Yeah, yeah, and probably our children will be the first ones to use it, and then there will be
Absolutely.
no way back.
Yes.
At home, silent, in the evening, chatting with each other. I guess that's already happening, just not with AI.
Yeah, I'll tell you, my son is 6, 6.5-ish, and his ability to use computers and technology is wild. Like, he figured out at, I wanna say about 3 or 4, he figured out voice to text
Mhm.
on my phone, on the computer, all of that. And so now, as we're teaching him how to spell, he's like, why do I need to learn how to spell when I can just use voice to text and it's going to write it for me? And so now we have to have that conversation, which generations before us did not have to
Yeah.
have. So, yeah, I definitely think probably Gen Alpha is going to be the ones that really embrace it and grow up with it. And so
Mhm.
that'll be really interesting to see then how it impacts the world of work once they get there.
Yeah, yeah, awesome. Well, on this enthusiastic note, is there anything that you would recommend, as a last advice to people who are on the job market? They are now looking for some maybe quick wins, not like those people
Mhm.
who I mentioned, like looking 6 months or 12 months ahead, but people who are there, maybe they lost their jobs and they are wondering, like, what do I do next? Like, how can I get some quick win quickly?
Yeah, so I would say make sure you're tailoring your materials. I think that's the biggest gap that I see for most professionals who are applying. They have one resume for everything that they apply to, and it's likely not tailored enough to the different job families that they might be applying for. And so just taking a little extra time to do more tailoring for the job family, I think would actually help most people,
Mm.
and making sure that they've got results, especially if you're in the IT space. You all have results for days on the things that you have done. So make sure that you're incorporating that into your statements.
Awesome. That's a good one. Like personalization in job search. It's like in
Hmm.
marketing, right? Awesome.
Hmm. Yeah.
Cool. And where can people connect with you if they would like to reach out and connect with you?
Yeah, so you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm very active there. Feel free
Ah,
to message me. But also, you can head to my website, ridethetidecollective.com. I have a podcast there that you can listen to. I have free resources and a lot of other information that you can learn about. So,
awesome. I'll include these links in the show notes and in the comments on YouTube. Awesome. Great. Well, thanks for joining. It was very nice learning from your experience and from your insights.
thank you so much for having me. This was great.
Thank you. Have a good day or evening.
You too.
Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.